Okay, everybody, it's 7 o'clock. We're going to start the meeting, so last call on getting your refreshments. I am Dan Moulton, your new Sierra Club XCOM chair. See, here's my mantle of power right here.
You got rid of those old bums, right, Dan? You got the old out?
Nah, he's still an old guy right there. Want to say thank you to John Lingenfelter, our retiring. Let's have a round of applause for John, who has for 2 years been the chair, and Wendell successfully railroaded me into the deal now, so I'll be trying to do the best I can. We have for sale tonight T-shirts. Well, Ginger, this is Ginger Bradley. Can you hawk your wares up there for a second, Ginger?
Yeah, we got T-shirts all sizes, small, medium, large, extra small, I think, and extra large. Anyway, $15, great killer shirts, and T-shirts too for 10, all sizes also. And of course, we got the excellent calendar, so still need to get rid of like 14 more calendars, guys. Come on, everybody needs one for your office, your desk, your home. And we got the big ones too, which are beautiful. And Arthur says the most popular calendar in the United States of America. Thank you.
I don't just say that. Everybody says that.
Everybody says it. Harold says that. So yeah, so that's what we got. So come and see me after the meeting or during the meeting. I don't care. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ginger. Now, Liz Whelan, you want to come up and give a little 1 or 2 minute description about the...
Well, welcome everyone.
Here.
Hopefully one of the reasons you're here is that you love the outdoors. So I'm speaking on behalf of Bill Greer, who's our new outings chair, before Mark, because they're both out doing outings. We would love to have you join us. The calendar for our outings is a little bit sparse right now just because of the weather, but it's continuing to fill up and there'll be more and more added all the time. Be sure you're signed up for our electronic outings news, just because that's the first and best way to get the newest information on our outings. And the best way to get ready for all of those, we want to go back a couple back. We have coming up our renowned Backpacking 101 class. We do this twice a year. We're kind of known around town as the best class offered, best price, best instructors, best information. It's just a really, really wonderful way to come spend some time on a Saturday to get to know your backpacking if you're interested in just getting started in it. You were in it several years ago and you want to update your skills. You have family or friends that want to come. It is only $35 for members, $40 for non-members, which is about half of someone else that teaches the class for only a few hours. We like to think we're really, really, really the best. But the main thing too is it's taught by our longtime experienced backpack veteran leaders. So you're not only getting just information on all the topics, the gear, the hands-on, and the backpacks, how to fit it, all these different kind of the food, the cooking, the safety, all these things, elements of backpacking, but you're also getting their words of wisdom along the way. They'll answer your questions. They'll help you with your gear if you want to bring it. They will throw out those helpful hints that we all wish somebody would have told us before our first and second and
So
third
we
trip.
can go back one.
Go back one. So, and new this year,
We
we're
can
still...
tell you how to backpack in that spot right there.
Yeah, there you go. We're at Whole Foods at Forest and Preston, so it's really easy, comfortable place. And starting with this year's class, we're also including a light lunch. So true value for your money. Everyone's welcome. Because we do handouts and the lunch, it's especially encouraged for you to sign up ahead of time. We have a PayPal link on the outings page in the calendar from which you can go. And we also, importantly, and what makes us a little different than some of the other classes and groups, is that we offer a couple of overnights, like one-night overnights, for the beginners that are from this class. So it gives you a really easy, fun, safe way to go out and just get started. So we would love to have you join us. I'm here tonight, and my contact information is on the website for any questions. We'd love to see you. We have like 200 years experience in the leaders that are teaching the class. So. Is that a stretch?
No, that's not
That's a
fair.
lot of
It makes us feel
You've
old.
got Arthur, you have Bill, you have Andy, you have Sue, you have myself, and you have Mark, at least some combination of that. That's a lot of years of backpacking experience. And at the end of the day, at the class two, something that's kind of unique is we break the men and the women apart so that you can ask and get answered those questions that you may not have wanted to deal with in front of the whole class. Because there are some little things that are a little bit different. So, thank you very much, and Happy New Year. This is a great way to get started for the new year, guys. Get ready for the outdoors.
Thank you, Liz. Yeah, there's some changes in leadership and committee chairs. I'm not gonna, you will meet them tonight, some of them, and otherwise go to the website and you'll see who's doing what. Now, are there any other announcements that need to be done before we have brief committee reports? No?
Dan, there was one, to the next slide, about next month. Can you click it one?
Next
further?
month? Oh, you mean about the program,
Yes,
which I believe is you.
it's me. So maybe some people will show up. We can talk about it tonight.
All right, the legendary Wendell Withrow will be making this presentation next month at the general meeting, okay?
It's an expanded version,
Briefly.
sorry,
all right.
it's an expanded version of what we did up in Oklahoma at the Beavers Bend Camp Out, and it was well received. It's gonna be an expanded version, and I think everybody will enjoy it. But we also, in case it didn't get mentioned, Kurt Miller has passed on the program chair, and we all need to give Kurt Miller an incredible round of applause for what he's done.
Who else did I leave out?
Welcome to new members.
Welcome to new members, first timers tonight.
Welcome, new members.
Who are the first timers?
See a show of hands.
Could we see, first timers, any first timers that have never attended a meeting before? Okay. And then are there new members? One. All right. Well, we keep pecking away. There's 40, how many?
4,700 approximately.
We've got about 4,700 members in the Dallas area, but very few of them are that active. So if you want to make an impression, come, show up, and we'll get you working. Woody Allen said 90% of life is just showing up. Now, let's go to our brief committee reports / announcements. First, we'll have Chris Gouldy of the Conservation Committee.
A lot of you are on my conservation email update, and if you are not and would like to hear about all the opportunities that I find out about, sort of as they accumulate in my inbox, I compress them and send them out to people who want to know what's happening here. Be sure to sign up on this email list, which I'm going to pass around. Also on this email list are the latest opportunities that I'm aware of. I'll draw your attention to only a couple that are coming up very soon. On Thursday, the 17th, January 17th, we're going to have a Clean Eco meetup, and those of you who have been in conservation for a while know what that is. Rita Beving leads it at Picasso's Pizza on Inwood at Forest, and it's an opportunity to meet a lot of the environmental activists from around the area. I'm not going to go through the rest of them because we have some really exciting news apart from that, which is that we have a new recycling czar. Victoria Howard, would you come up here? Victoria is taking over from the Millers. She's going to keep us up to date on our, and keep our website up to date and check that that's correct.
Thank you. I hope I can live up to the lovely title that Chris has given me as Recycling Czar. No pressure. As Chris said, I'm Victoria Howard, and in addition to now being asked to be the recycling chair for Sierra Club, I also run a small recycling advocacy group called Save Lucas Recycling, Turn Lucas Green. You may have seen some of my postings on Facebook about the styrofoam recycling program that we started in Lucas, which is between Allen and McKinney. So I would love for any of you who have ideas or questions or things about recycling that you would like addressed to please feel free to email me or call me or see me after the meeting, because it's really important to me to include everyone in this, and also people who may live more rurally than the Dallas area. They seem to get the shortest end of the recycling stick. So I look forward to working with you all, and thank you truly for the opportunity to do this. I really appreciate it. Save Lucas Recycling, Turn Lucas Green. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Victoria. Thank you, Chris. Let's do the outings program. Now, the new chair, Bill Greer, is out of town, and so is the old chair, Mark Stein. Is there anyone?
Liz.
Liz, you already did it?
That was what I did, was the outings.
Okay, that was quick. Good work.
I'll do it again to remind everybody, so February 9th.
Yeah, Bill's
That's-
hiking
that's
in the,
okay.
Bill's hiking in the Grand Canyon right now.
Going out.
Bill is on an outing in the Grand Canyon. Is David Griggs here?
Not yet.
David is not here, so David,
Oh, David's in Austin for
Oh.
the newsletter.
Swearing in.
Yep.
Swearing in.
Political
All of our new
committee is
legislators.
politically.
all right, well, we won't have a political committee report because the chairman, David Griggs, is in Austin politicizing. So we will move on now to the programs. Chair, we have co-chairs, new co-chairs. As Wendell said, Kirk Miller has handed off programs to Victor Zertucci and Paul Rendon. They're going to give a brief report, then they're going to introduce our first speaker of the evening.
Take it away.
Thank you guys, and thank you for having us. Again, welcome to all the new members. Paul and I, not too long ago, were new members ourselves, and now we stepped into the leadership position and program co-chairs, and are thankful to Kirk and Wendell, Dan, Ginger, everybody for, John, Arthur, everyone for being so welcoming to us and showing us the ropes of Sierra Club. Like I said, my name is Victor Zertucci. I'm an environmental attorney here in Dallas. So this is something that's very near and dear to my heart. I'll let Paul introduce himself.
And my name is Paul. I've just real quickly, we plan on adding some nice and fun new meetings here. Sorry, I'm learning the ropes. This is our first night doing this, and I look forward to working with each and every one of you. Hopefully we can, if you have any questions or new program ideas that we could put into our meetings, please come up to me and let me know. I have my card. We have our information that we can pass out.
Perfect. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started with our first program of the afternoon, or the evening rather. Mr. Murray Myers for the Dallas Office of Environmental Quality and Sustainability. Mr. Myers is the Sustainability Manager for EQS, and his team provides environmental outreach and manages several of the sustainability projects such as the Environmental Action Plan, Branch Out Dallas, and Community Garden Grants. So I will go ahead and pass the microphone, and if you can join me in welcoming Mr. Myers.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me. I was looking at the calendar again. I was like, wow, it's 2019. So this is actually my 10th year in Dallas, in the region. I came from Houston, and when I started working with the city, I actually got my start working with Councilmember Angela Hunt. And so I have an interesting perspective because when I first started working with the city as an organization, I had kind of an outside perspective, and now I'm working for the city. And so I've been able to kind of have a balanced perspective in terms of what we should be continually pushing the city to do, and then what feasibly can the city do. And so today I want to talk a little bit about the department I'm in now. I come from sanitation services, where my focus was on recycling and the zero waste plan. But now our department, Office of Environmental Quality and Sustainability, or we also call it Dallas Environmental Quality and Sustainability, has gone through a lot of changes in the past year.
Second. Get there 5 feet.
Yeah, 5, I hit that to get out.
So as part of some restructuring over the summer,
There you go.
Oh, that is.
our city manager's office took a look at the operations, and one of the things that happened was our department absorbed parts of the water utilities department, parts of sanitation services, parts of Trinity Watershed Management. And so what happened is overnight we doubled in size. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about how that's changed our operations recently and how that's going to enable us to streamline some of our projects. So the department itself was actually created in 2004. If you know the history, the city got into some trouble with how they managed pollution control or pollutants in our waterways, and so our department was formed in 2004. In 2008, not many people know about this, but the city of Dallas became the first city in the U.S., and I think it's still pretty rare. There's not many cities that have the ISO 14001 certification. And then recently, in this past year, we've absorbed multiple operations and doubled in size. We were at about 40 people, now we're close to 100 people in our department.
So what is ISO 14?
So I'll cover that in just a second. But, no, that's fine. There's a lot of corporations that incorporate ISO 14001 into their operations. It's mostly about standardizing what you do and then focusing on continual improvement. Setting a goal every year, trying to achieve it, and then after you do that, it's about improving on that and setting the next goal. So in the blue is what we worked on before. You know, we have air pollution control, ambient air quality. EMS is the environmental management systems, and internal compliance. That's where we do some internal audits. Environmental due diligence, spill response, and sustainability outreach and education. What we've added on is water conservation, zero waste, and stormwater management. So what does that mean? So for the most part, we act as the city's in-house environmental consultant. We manage the EMS program, the Environmental Management Systems program. We perform 24/7 spill response. We monitor trends and take action to improve air quality, to improve water quality. We offer lots of training opportunities for city employees so that they can be up to speed with the right processes in terms of protecting the environment, having a lesser environmental footprint. And then we do a lot of ICI or industrial, commercial, and institutional outreach to make sure that the businesses in Dallas are operating like they should. So in FY18, what does that look like in terms of numbers? So 8,000 construction and industrial facilities were inspected, which means, you know, what are they doing at these construction sites? What are they doing on these commercial properties? This is a really famous case you may remember, but the pig's blood in the Trinity River, are they dumping pig's blood in the parking lot or down the storm drain? So those are what some of those inspections cover. 160 construction consultations, that means we're talking to them about best practices so that they can improve on what they're doing. I won't go through all of it because I think Dan will pull me off here pretty quick. We do 171 environmental audits, that's internally to the different city departments, and then in terms of outreach, depending on if it's social media or tabling events or workshops, we reach about 155,000 people. So I just throw this up there because there's some facts that you may not know. So the city of Dallas actually purchases 100% renewable energy credits. And so to cover EMS, and I'll do this really quickly since I want to get to the climate action plan, which I think a lot of people are interested in. But ISO 14001, it provides a systematic and methodical approach to planning, implementing, and reviewing the environmental impact that a lot of departments have. So for example, what type of impact do the sanitation trucks have on the environment? Obviously there's emissions, there's the potential to leak fluids. There's also, in terms of wear on roads, you know, how frequently are they going to wear down the roads, which means they have to be repaired, which means you're going to need more asphalt to repair those roads. So ISO looks at all the different types of environmental impacts, and then it sets goals. So if you have 50 sanitation trucks and they're diesel trucks, what's the goal for transitioning some of those to electric if you can, or transitioning some of those to CNG? And then it's about improving that every year as you move forward. So I'll go over some of the goals, but in total, there's about 14 departments in the city of Dallas that participate in the environmental management system. They meet with our department quarterly, and then we go and do an audit to make sure that they're being able to the goals they set and to their standard operating procedures. So I'm going to go over some examples of some of the goals that the departments have set. So for example, you have Love Field. They aim to improve recycling by 5%. They did that by installing more signage, because if you went to Love Field before, it was difficult to see where was your recycling, where was your trash. They installed new signage. Public Works is working to reduce their paper usage by 5%. Some other goals that you may not know about: code compliance is trying to go paperless in the next year with their food inspection system. Dallas Fire Rescue, they have all types of materials, specialized materials that oftentimes get thrown away. So how do you find homes for your old uniforms or for your boots? So they've been getting really creative in recycling or reusing materials like that. Our Parks Department, they've done a lot of impressive work. In a year, they're trying to add 50 acres of wildflowers. They're reducing their mow schedules to 1 or 2 times a year if they can. The Water Department, they're trying to reduce water consumptions by 46 million gallons over a 1-2 year period. Love Field is actually going carbon neutral with their first goal being decreasing carbon emissions by 10% per passenger by 2025. So these are all internal goals that a lot of people don't see, but our department holds them accountable. We review their goals, and for them, you know, a lot of these are achieved, but they don't hold a parade. We don't do a lot of publicizing about it. They meet the goal, and then it's, okay, what's next? How do you improve on that goal? Or let's set the goal higher for the next year and the next year. And so that's essentially it. ISO is about continuous improvement and getting everything standardized so it's more efficient. So I'll go quickly through this next section. Don't know if you knew that the landfill has been capturing methane for over 20 years. If you have had a chance to take a tour, you'll be able to see some of these capturing mechanisms. There's also a new recycling facility there on the property, so there's a lot of cool stuff to see. A lot of people think it's just a dump, but there's a lot of impressive equipment and operations on the site. So in terms of sustainability and outreach, what do? This has been a work in progress for us over the past few months, because before it was just a few of us talking about sustainability, but since the merger, it's now us and our folks in water conservation, our folks in stormwater, our team in Zero Waste, all getting together to strategize and to streamline how do we convey that message the most effective way instead of a really scattered or an isolated or siloed approach. So we've been reviewing different topics. Of course, moving forward, we'll talk more about climate change. We've talked with Dan to see how our organizations can work together in terms of avoiding duplications. So you guys have a lot of great presentations that Dan does, so we may not have to cover some of those. Or if we get requests for certain topics, that's something that we can work together and see who would be the best to cover some of these. Green living, that's how do you live sustainably at home, water conservation, recycling and composting, and then food security or urban ag. These are an example of some of the events. Of course, the one coming up in just a few weeks is the North Texas Climate Change Symposium on February 4th. My information is at the end if you're curious to sign up. Just email me and I can get you registered. These are some of the other events that we host throughout the year: the Trash Bash, Litter Dash, we're at EarthX, National Night Out, and this past year we went to 10 to 15 National Night Outs. Don't know if many people know about this, but if you're familiar with the Energy Star portfolio rating, DFW actually ranks 3rd in the nation, and a lot of that is due to Dallas 23rd District, which is downtown. They focus on improving water and energy efficiency in a lot of those downtown buildings. And because of their efforts, Dallas typically ranks highest, or one of the highest cities in those national rankings. So I'm going to go really quickly over the programs we have now. If you have any questions afterwards, I'll hang out and talk about them, or my email's on the presentation. But this one closes pretty soon, actually this Friday. So if anyone wants a free 5-gallon tree and you live in the city of Dallas, send me an email. Registration closes on Friday, and then March 9th you'll be able to pick them up at a location here within the city limits. We also have community garden grants. So if it's less than 1/4 of an acre, you can get up to $1,000. If it's more than 1/4 of an acre, you can get $2,000. Most of the expenditures are on materials for garden beds, drip irrigation systems, plants, rainwater harvesting. The applications, when you look at them, they appear cumbersome, but we're more than happy to walk people through the process and actually fill out that application for them. Some of you may not know that we have a green business certification program. So when we were talking about the apartment recycling ordinance, we met with BOMA, we met with the Apartment Association, we met with Antex, or the Hotel Association of North Texas, and they asked us to do a few things. One was set up a recycling go-kart service, and another was a program that would recognize businesses in Dallas that recycled and were sustainable in other areas. So depending on what they're doing, they can get certified platinum, gold, silver, or bronze. And they get recognized on our website, on social media. We have links to their stories, to their rankings. You can see the Renaissance Dallas was gold. We don't have anyone platinum yet. The Bank of America, the Via Santa Maria apartment complex was actually the very first property to be certified. I believe that was a senior living property, and they were just thrilled and excited about setting up recycling. They had signage everywhere. Their diversion rate was really high. I can't remember it, but this goes to show anyone can apply and get certified. Another program, this is dealing more with water conservation, is Drone for Your Home. I don't know if you're aware, if you have an older toilet, or if your toilet looks something like this, probably means that you qualify for a drone for your home. Many people may not know that it also works for multifamily properties as well. So if there's any property managers that want to switch out 50 toilets, they can apply. This program is focused more towards low income. So if there's some minor things that we can do in the home that improves water efficiency and that we can help the home with, they apply online. We actually go to a lot of neighborhoods and we help them with the application process to get free minor plumbing repairs. This is another popular program, if anyone's interested, storm drain markers. So essentially, a group volunteers and you can adopt a certain neighborhood or a certain area and we'll tell you whether or not those storm drains need markers. And then you can go and actually install them yourselves on the city streets. I know the fish looks a little funky there. We're looking at updating the logo, so any ideas? Not sure if anyone knew that there's actually a few properties, City of Dallas properties that host bee colonies. This one here is at Eco Park where I used to office at, right next to it. And then jumping to upcoming projects, of course, January 1st or January, I guess exactly this time next year, the apartment recycling ordinance will be into effect, which means any property that has more than 8 units will be required to provide recycling for their residents. And that was a long process. I think when the Zero Waste Plan was passed in 2014, it said it was voluntary, but thankfully we had enough public support to move forward with an apartment recycling ordinance. So what does that mean? It doesn't mean that if there's a property with 100 units, you can't just put one of those recycling bins out and say, hey, we're recycling, and check the box. You've actually have to provide 11 gallons of capacity per unit per week. So if you're looking at the numbers, a property with about 100 units would have to provide at a minimum 1 6-yard recycling dumpster, and that would have to be collected at least once a week. So there are rules in there that requires them to provide the proper capacity for that entire complex to recycle.
Will the city pick up the recyclables, or does the apartment complex have to pay for that?
That's a good question. So the city of Dallas is actually a free market, which means that there's it could be any company. And that's often a question we get. Now, the city of Dallas, in terms of commercial, we will provide the roll cart service because that's an area where there's not a lot of businesses. So there's a couple of angles to it. It's a free market, so you have Waste Management, you have Republic, you have Balcones, you have a lot of other big haulers and big companies that collect. So the city of Dallas could cause a lot of friction if they decided to collect those large dumpsters and compactors as well. But where there's not a lot of collection is with the roll carts. That's smaller capacity, and that's something that the businesses asked that we would provide, because the roll carts enables them to scale up, and it also is more affordable. You know, if you want to try it out at a small business and you want to go to 2 recycling roll carts and it's working well, then you can scale up to more. You can also convert to a dumpster. If it's not working out, or people just don't know how to recycle or they contaminate it, then you can easily remove it from the property. But there's a couple of options. Of course, all Dallas households are collected by the city of Dallas. But when you get into the commercial realm, it could be anyone, and you can kind of do some price checking. Who's the cheapest? There are some companies that internally they care more about recycling than other companies, and I can provide some input on that offline if you like. But it can be a tricky area to navigate for the city. So for the Environmental and Climate Action Plan, what it will do is it'll establish a goal for Dallas based on the Paris Climate Agreement. Whether that's zero carbon by 2050, 80% reductions by 2040. One of those goals is what it will establish. It'll use the city's 2015 greenhouse gas inventory to identify short and midterm actions and programs to reduce emissions. And the more difficult or complex part of what we'll do in our plan is combine current city environmental plans into one plan that's more accessible. And I'll show you an example. So here is the list of all of the current City of Dallas environmental plans. which kind of shows why we don't want to just put out another environmental plan, is because it's just going to be diluted. So you have, your long-range water supply plan, that's one. You have the zero waste plan. You have the Parks and Recreation Comprehensive Plan, really great plan. You have the MS4 Stormwater Management Plan. So it kind of shows you the trends of what the city's done in the past, is it's operated in silos and everyone produces their own plan. So that's part of the reason we didn't want to create another separate climate action plan. So instead what we're going to do is we're going to take all of the current goals and actions in these plans and tie them together so there's one umbrella environmental plan for the city, which incorporates a new section that addresses climate action. So I'm going to show you really quickly, climate action plans. What do they look like? These are two of the best examples I've found. One from Portland, you can see their goal there. Another from New York City, theirs is called the 1.5 degrees Celsius plan. They first start off with using the greenhouse gas inventory to identify where are all of the emissions coming from. What are the percentages? What are the breakdowns? Usually it's buildings and transportation, which are the highest pieces of that pie. Then you go and you tackle, okay, if those are the largest pieces, how do we create programs to address emissions in those areas? And so I'll show you what part of what Portland did is this is kind of like their key. They have city acronyms there because I'm about to show you, they're going to hold each city department accountable for those programs. And then they're also going to set near-term goals, mid-term goals, and long-term goals, and they're going to show you what the potential impact for those are. So just for an example, this is their energy and buildings portion of the plan. You can see one of the goals or one of the programs is addressing commercial energy performance benchmarking, or a benchmarking ordinance, similar to what you see in the city of Boston. So you can see at the bottom, what is the magnitude of carbon emissions reductions? You have 4 C's, so they think that an energy performance benchmarking program would have the impact of 3 out of 4 C's, which is pretty good. What is there a potential to support jobs and prosperity? They think so. And so it's provided in a key, and you can see what's the lead agency, because you have to hold the department or the organization accountable if you want the plan to be actionable. So that's part of what they did here, and then they set the time frame for it. Other plans have very specific time frames. It's not just near term or midterm. And I'm happy to share any of these plans with you if you're interested. And then just to go really quickly, New York City, again, you can kind of see the same approach. What does it look like in terms of emissions if we're just doing business as usual? And then if we incorporate and implement all of the programs in our plan, what will that look like? And it shows the trend line there. And then you can see the same approach, which is difficult to see, but there's a legend at the top. And so for example, the first action says implement long-term energy intensity requirements in existing buildings. Who's the lead? Who's the department that's going to be accountable? They listed. What do they think the greenhouse gas reductions will be? On the legend, that means major reduction potential greater than 400,000 carbon tons by 2030. What's the city investment? You have $4 signs, which means for the New York City, it's close to $1 billion of investment by 2030 to meet that goal. What is the non-city investment? Meaning what is the commercial investment for the businesses in the city? You can see that's also that's a high investment. And so it's set up in a way that enables people to understand, okay, if we want to do this, this is the department or organization that's going to be responsible, and this is how much it's going to cost, and here's the potential for the greenhouse gas reductions. So it's very strategic in its approach, and just want to show you a couple examples so you kind of have an idea of what some of the better climate action plans look like. And with that, what does the timeline look like? Well, the contract for the consultant is going to council January 23rd. We've worked, the department has worked tirelessly and as quick as we could to kind of put this together and get it to council. As soon as that's approved, it'll kickstart the process, which means in February is kind of the visioning phase. What will the goal be? What will the plan look like? In March, the City Environmental Task Force, that's internal, because as I said, so there's multiple task forces, but one is the City Environmental Task Force, because that's the task force that's gonna tackle all those plans that you saw in one of the previous slides, the 10 to 15 plans. We've got to figure out how to piece those together so it's just one plan moving forward. And then the stakeholder groups, the residents, the businesses, those meetings will start in March. In April will be the large-scale public meetings. We plan to have at least 6 all throughout Dallas in April. In the summer, after taking the feedback from those public meetings and seeing what the public wants in a plan, then we'll start to develop the actions. What do the actions look like? What do the programs look like? And in the fall, we'll come back and we'll do another set of 6 meetings. And in between, we imagine there's going to be a lot of one-on-one meetings. So a specific organization wants to have their thoughts and concerns heard. We would meet with them one-on-one outside of the public meetings to make sure we get everyone's input, as much input as possible. And other cities have done this as well, like the city of Fort Worth with their comprehensive solid waste management plan. Because it's difficult to get everyone's schedules to work out when you're doing this one initial push. So you've got to be flexible as a city and be able to meet with people when it's convenient for them. So we're going to be really pushing this for 2019. We're going to be in several places talking about it and collecting as much information and input as possible. In the winter is when we'll start to finalize the actions, what are going to be the priority actions and programs for the city moving forward, and then our launch date as of today, as of now, is Earth Day 2020. And so that puts us in a 12 to 16 month window, which is pretty fast for a climate action plan. Depending on the city, can take anywhere between 16 months to 24 months.
What does launch mean?
So thank you. That's a good question. So we envision, and things always tend to happen, but maybe February, March, it goes to council. If it gets approved during that time, then it'll be officially launched to the entire city, Earth Day 2020. And so I know I'm over, sorry Dan, but that's the timeline for the Environmental and Climate Action Plan. And just ways you can help us out as a department, as a city. Participate in one of the programs, tell your neighbors and friends about one of the programs. You can go online and search some of our activities. We're on social media, of course volunteer. And just really want to thank you guys for the opportunity. And I'm here for any questions. I don't know how much time I have, but I can stay after and go over anything one-on-one. Yes?
You mentioned the greenhouse gas inventory 2015. When is the 2018 one available?
So the greenhouse gas inventory reports, it depends on the city. Some cities do them every 5 years, some cities do them every 2 years, because it takes a lot of work to get that information. Essentially, we're asking every city department for information, tracking them down, calling their bosses, calling their bosses' bosses. So I think right now the plan is we're going to be somewhere in the middle. It's not going to be 2020. It's going to be something sooner. But I'll have to check and I'll let you know. The results
I
of
thought there was one that was supposed to be finished at the end of the summer in 2018. We're still waiting for it.
That's correct. Yeah, we are behind on releasing the results on that. I would imagine in this next month, as part of the agenda item, where we'll have the consultant online and have that process finished, we'll present the greenhouse gas inventory report at the same time. But it's pretty similar to what you see in most greenhouse gas inventory reports, which shows that energy and buildings and transportation are the largest pieces of the pie. The cities or the municipal operations is actually a small fraction. So the city could go carbon neutral, but in terms of what that would do regionally, it wouldn't do much. Which is why we need the entire city, residents, businesses on board to really make an impact. Yes, sir.
What are your biggest concerns for the Dallas environment?
Can you say that again?
What are your biggest concerns with the Dallas environment?
Yeah, that's a good question. So it depends on the division you speak to, because different divisions are focused on different things. We have an air quality division. We have, of course, the sanitation department focused on recycling. I think one of the hurdles for the environmental and climate action plan is making sure that we get everyone's input. And we know that in the past, we've held meetings when it's been convenient for the city and not convenient for the residents. So we've got to have more opportunities for when it's convenient for residents, and we've got to be in as many neighborhoods as possible. Because to be honest with you, most of the people that are going to show up to these are people that care about the environment. But what we know about climate change is that it's going to impact the residents that impact climate change the least. So the poor neighborhoods that don't have 2 or 3 cars, they're taking the bus to work. They're cutting off their AC and their lights because they can't afford to keep their homes cool in the summer. They're going to be most impacted by climate change because they're not going to be able to just get up and move if Dallas floods or if there's a heat wave in Dallas. So we've got to make sure that the plan is equitable and that everyone can give input and knows what climate change is, first of all, and then 2, how do you mitigate it? So I would say for me, of course, being the sustainability person and focused on education, that educating the public and getting them familiar with climate change and getting past this whole is it real, is it not, is one of our hurdles to tackle.
Thank you, Murray. And if there's other questions, you can, I don't know if Murray's going to stick around. I'm the next speaker. Victor, do you want to introduce me, or should I just go on? Well, I've got the long program tonight. I was going to say the legendary wildlife biologist is here to talk to you, but I blew that. The title of this talk is Wildlife of the Northwestern Hawaiian Islands, a place where I doubt any of you have ever been, unless some of you may have been in the Navy, been on Midway. No. Okay, then you won't know what I'm saying is right or wrong.
Make it up.
Okay, well, back in 1979, by the way, I've had these slides since 79 and 80. Just like last year, bought a scanner from Kodak, little machine, $150 or something. And fortunately for me, the slides were still in good shape, and I scanned them, and they came out beautifully, I think. I'll let you be the judge of that. So back in 79 and 80, I worked for the United States Fish and Wildlife Service as a field wildlife biologist, and we got some money to look at the Laysan duck, which is an endangered duck found only on Laysan Island. And there was some controversy about fishing and seabirds back then, so I went to the island with 2 seabird biologists who did food studies and a married couple who supposedly were studying the behavior of another endangered species, the Hawaiian monk seal. Now you Howleys can't pronounce that name, I'm sure. Papahanaumokukuakea, otherwise known as the Hawaiian Islands National Wildlife Refuge. And then this area here is a marine sanctuary. This refuge line here was originally established by George W. Bush. Yay. And then it was enlarged by President Obama to cover quite a large area of the ocean. And that's, what's that?
Trump hadn't undone it yet.
Well, I don't think he's gotten to this yet. It's important that we not have a lot of heavy fishing, going on close to these islands because these islands are the nesting sites for literally millions and millions of seabirds, okay? And if the fish are all taken away, then what happens to the seabirds? Because they eat fish, right? Have any of you read James Michener's Hawaii?
Yes.
You remember how the first 1,000 pages was all about the geology of Hawaii and you thought you'd never get through it? Well, this talks a lot like that. Just kidding, just kidding. But I do want to say one or two things. And that is about the hot spot that has created the Hawaiian Islands. You know there's a hot spot, it's right here. There's a new island forming here now, hasn't broken the surface, it's called Loihi. The volcanologists and geologists say it will break the surface between 10 and 100,000 years from now. So you don't want to be buying your condos quite yet, probably. I guess I don't know if they calculate sea level rise into such a statement, but they did give themselves some leeway, 10,000 to 100,000 years from now. And so that island is forming and underwater and getting higher and higher, it'll break the surface. You realize that the hot spot, the Pacific Plate has moved over this hot spot over millions and millions of years. So in other words, the big island used to be over the hot spot. It still is because Kilauea is an active volcano. Now, none of the other islands have an active volcano. Haleakala on Maui is not active anymore. So as the plate moves, the islands move with it. And this light keeps going out. I guess it's getting weak. This is all islands in the Hawaiian chain. Most of them passed about here, have been all worn down by the ocean, and there's no volcanic rock above the surface. So they're called seamounts. And then on top of the old lava, which may be a long way under the surface, coral grows. And it grows and it grows until it breaks the surface. And then the waves begin to grind up the coral and make sand and break off pieces of coral. And that's what these islands are made out of once you get to the northwestern islands. Anybody know what that island right there is? It's Niihau. And that island none of you have ever been on, I'm quite sure. Neither have I, because that's where Native Hawaiians live. It's a reservation for Native Hawaiians. You can't go there without special invitation. I didn't get one. But I did go by there at night in a ship once, and they had lots of fires going, so I assume they were doing some sort of Hawaiian rituals or something. Okay. I don't think I need to. Is this about right here?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Let's get going. Laysan Island is, right about here, and that's 930 statute miles from Honolulu. Midway is out here, and that's farther. You've all heard of Midway, of course, the big Battle of Midway. There's still a Naval Air Force base on Midway Island. In fact, I flew out of there in 80. Let's keep it going. That's not right, is it? Okay, what have I done?
Push the right button.
Push the right button. Nothing is happening.
The correct button.
I think the battery may be going dead on this. Well,
Let me see it real quick.
I'll have to work from the,
That worked.
okay, what did you push?
This one right here.
That's what I pushed.
Oh, you just don't push it right.
See. Okay, so getting to the island, 930 miles from Honolulu, is not easy, and it's not for the faint of heart. This is the Coast Guard cutter Buttonwood. There's another one called the Ironwood. What these ships are is Great Lakes icebreakers. that were built in the 1940s and transported to Hawaii, and now they function as buoy tenders. You see the big beam here to lift those big navigation buoys on deck if they have to. They also have divers on board who just dive down and check the moorings and so on. This is how, in 1979, we all got to Laysan Island. This is on the way. This is, once you get past islands like Necker and Nihoa, which you may have never heard of, that are, out past the main islands, they get smaller and smaller. This is called Gardner Pinnacles. And this is what's left of the volcanic crater. All that's left, not very much. And eventually that'll be worn down and it'll just be a seamount, and coral will form on it, and we'll have another low island. Now, you can see here, this is typical northwestern island. You see how low it is? That is the main island in French Frigate Shoals. There's actually people who live on this island full-time. They don't live permanently. They shift, and you can see here's the boat coming out to get some supplies we're dropping for them. And if you'll notice, there's a woman with a baby here, and that's the husband. He works for the Fish and Wildlife Service. They live over here. You can see the building. And this is not for the faint of heart. Although there is a runway. If you had a medical emergency, there's a runway on that island. Now, if you look here, over here is a very low island. That's called East Island. And I want to show you this picture. This I stole off the internet, obviously, because I didn't fly over there in 2018. This is East Island before Hurricane Walaka went through there and hit it. The island is only about 11 acres, and it has some low vegetation on it. But it's important to nesting seabirds, Hawaiian monk seals, maybe green sea turtles. When the hurricane went through there, it totally wiped it out. The island is now gone. All that's left, I'm hitting everything wrong. All that's left of this island is that little tiny sandbar right there. Now, this is a good example of climate change caused by global warming, because we have two things at work here. One is sea level rise, and the other is increased strength of storms, particularly hurricanes over warm water. So this has never been recorded before. And that goes back to the early 1800s when the whalers were active all out along here. Nobody has ever seen this happen before. This island disappear, or any of these small islands disappear. So this may be a harbinger of things to come. And we know that many South Sea Islanders have already been forced off of their islands due to sea level rise. They're flooded. Well, here we are. I think I'm one of the people in that boat. This is a different boat. This isn't the Buttonwood. This is a NOAA research vessel called the Cromwell, which is the other way we can get out there. So this is where the ships have to park, way out away from the coral reef, because they don't want to come into shallow water. So you come in a landing boat through this opening in the reef to Laysan with all your equipment, all your water and 5-gallon jerry cans and so on. It's quite an ordeal, really. Did we miss our map of the island?
It was one of those that didn't go.
Was it?
Yeah. I think.
Well, I had an aerial photo of Laysan, but it didn't go for some reason. We had to drop it off. So I'll have to do without that. This is the south. Laysan is an island that's about north and south axis. It's 1 mile wide and 1.5 miles long. That's about 1,000 total acres. In the middle is a hypersaline lagoon. It used to be an open lagoon, but the coral eventually built up and now it's closed off and it's a lake. But in the winter, big storms will blow waves over the dunes, and so seawater gets concentrated in there. And as it evaporates, you get this hypersaline water. And this water is really hypersaline in the lake. We'll see a picture later. This is a coral ledge at the south end of the island. And if you see, there's something sticking up over here. We'll see what that is in just a minute. Go back. Here's the ubiquitous Sally Lightfoot crabs that run around on those rocks that I showed you. I thought about trying to catch these to eat them, but they're very difficult to catch. They're fast. And they can jump. This is the other crab that I commonly saw, which is just a ghost crab. They burrow in the sand on the beaches and they come out at night. And when you go out there at night, they're all running all over the place. And it's a small, very small crab. Now that thing that was sticking up, this is what it was. This is a Japanese trawler. And this is one of the problems for any of these islands. What if this ship had rats on it? Now, they didn't wreck there on the beach. You know, they wrecked somewhere out there, and then the waves and the winter storms blew it in onto the coral and the beach. But the danger, they're not supposed to be fishing there for starters, okay? And that's one of the reasons we wanted to expand that National Marine Sanctuary that I showed you on the map. So this trawler wrecked, and all the Japanese sailors were rescued. Nobody died. And at that time, the Coast Guard figured there was no water out there. So if nobody could have picked these guys up, they would have died of thirst. So the Coast Guard decided they need to bury some fresh water. I take it that wreck happened in '67 or maybe early in '68. The Coast Guard came out with these giant barrels, black rubber barrels filled with water, and they buried them in the sand and they put that sign there. So if there was another shipwreck, people wouldn't die of thirst. You know, those rubber barrels, they stink even when you smell the outside of them, so I don't know what that water would be like, but it would be better than dying of thirst, pretty sure. They used to be buried, but you see the wind has uncovered them. Now, Laysan Island was subjected to guano mining starting in the late 1890s and going up to like 1915 or something like that. And of course the laborers were Japanese and the overseers were people from Hawaii, and one of them was named Max Schlemmer, and I'll tell you something in a minute. But this is what remains of one of the tramways that they used to pull guano back to the campsite where they would load it onto ships. So that's all that's left of the rails. Not much. Mules pulled these carts that were full of this rock guano. And this is a big pile of that guano that they mined, but they never got it back to the dock. And those birds that are sitting on that guano are itinerant bristle-thighed curlews that are often seen on these islands. They cover a lot of ground. Now, I tried to find out, I know when people see this, this is near the camp, which is at the northwest end of the island. And people lived on this island when they were mining guano. And one of the overseers was left alone on the island, and when the ship came back, he was found dead sitting in a chair at a table in the office. And so I don't think they knew what killed the guy. Had to be something like a stroke or a heart attack, I assume. They buried him right here. That's his ghost, right there. That is a fairy tern or white tern. We'll see some more pictures of. Don't ask me who the other cross is for, because I don't have any idea, and I tried to research it a little. In '79, I talked with a guy who lived on this island. He was the son of this Max Schlemmer. His name was Eric Schlemmer. And I don't think he had many fond memories for living on Lausanne. He was a kid at that time. And it didn't occur to me I hadn't been out there and seen these two crosses, so I bet he may have known who the other one was. Could have been a baby that the mother had that didn't survive, but I don't really know. So life was tough out there, and people didn't come by very often, especially in the age of sailing ships, you know. This is the north end of the island, and right here is the highest point above sea level along this big dune, and that's about 40 feet above sea level. This is a small grove of coconut palms that I think may have been planted there because during the guano mining period, Max Schlemmer had the bright idea to introduce rabbits and guinea pigs onto the island to start a rabbit canning business. Made good sense to him. What do you think happened with the rabbits? They ate the vegetation completely up on the island. They completely destroyed all the vegetation. An expedition was sent by Fish and Wildlife, and they killed rabbits until they ran out of ammunition, but they didn't get them all, so that's just as good as not getting any of them, really. They finally died in the 20s, in the early 20s, because they had eaten all their food, and they all died of starvation. So that leaves us with an island that's denuded. And the sand moved quite a bit during that period, and they started to revegetate the island with whatever they could get hold of. They tried to use endemic species. And I think these cocoa palms were one of the things that were planted. You see the island is well vegetated now with bunch grasses and various other, and some shrubs and creeping plants and so on. You see these are masked boobies. They're getting some use out of the cocoa palms anyway. Okay, this is the camp where we lived for 5 months in '79 and then another 5 months in 1980. They're pretty decent wall tents, but after 5 months you do get a little bit tired of living in a tent. These are the two seabird biologists, Eric and Maura, who were studying the fish, the eating habits, the food habits of the seabirds. Why is that important? Because they wanted to find out what species the fish eat and then see what species the fishermen are taking, because there was a problem there. And so that's one of the reasons that we have the marine sanctuary now. When we get there in March, these rain flies, the wind would be strong enough to like just tear the grommets right out of those. So there were some harsh conditions. This shows our kitchen tent. There's a screen. You got to have screen on your tents. With millions of seabirds and rotten dead eggs, the blowflies are thick, really thick. And if you don't have a mesh on your tent, you're going to have a tent full of blowflies all the time. The big albatross eggs, when they would explode, you could hear them pop. And of course the rotten egg gas smell, and then blowflies would use this as quite a nice food source. You notice the cans on these steel L-beams, L-rods here? Well, before we put them on, Maura ran into one at night and opened up her shin pretty bad. And so we decided we needed to take some used cans and just put them on the top of those L bars to prevent that, and that worked pretty well. Okay, this is a picture of a camera I used. We'll talk about it in a minute. Main thing I want you to see in this picture is, you see these? These are 5-gallon jerry cans, and that's our water for 5 people for 5 months. And you can imagine bringing them in off of a ship in those Zodiac boats is a chore. The cans are here. You know what a jerry can is? You know why they're called jerry cans? Because the Germans invented this can and used it in World War II. And of course, the Germans were known as Jerry's. So we call them jerry cans. I don't know what the Germans called them. Another, as you can see, the white tern is a curious bird and completely unafraid of human beings. I don't remember what year this was. It might have been 1980. It doesn't matter. This is a Coast Guard C-130, and we had this happen once. They flew over and they dropped a metal can with ice in it, and it had a few cans of beer and a few oranges in it, and our mail that was in a plastic bag so it wouldn't get wet in there. And that was appreciated, but they only did it once in 5 months. We had all our food with us, of course. You see all of these birds. These are frigate birds. Flying an aircraft low over one of these islands is not for the faint of heart. You could run into one of these birds, or they run into you, and bring the whole plane down. So these guys, I can see why they wouldn't want to do this very often. They, you know, a C-130, you push the cargo right out that ramp, and it just comes flying out the back. Now we'll just quickly look at some of the bird species that I have pictures for. This is not all the bird species that occur on the island. It's the ones I have some decent pictures for. This is a brown booby in flight. This is a brown booby with a young nestling. Notice the rough nest made of sticks, just very rough. But they'll often use the same nest year after year. This is I guess the same nest, and now the chick outweighs the parent. So these birds have to fish intensively to raise young. This is a red-footed booby. You can just see part of the red foot right there. And you can see this is a better organized stick nest. And this is guano. The bird has whitewashed this nest for years. They use these nests year after year. This is a red-footed booby with young. These are masked boobies. Pardon? The bird in the background is a Laysan albatross chick, and then there's an adult grooming itself right there. We'll see some more. This is a red-tailed tropic bird. There's another tropic bird, but the white-tailed, but I never did see one on Laysan. This is one on the ground. These birds are completely unafraid of human beings. You can walk right up to them. This is probably with a normal 50-millimeter lens. And you can see I had to chop off part of the bird's tail because I was too close, basically. Now this is on Midway Island. And this is a problem they've had for years. This is a red-tailed tropic bird chick. And this growth is caused by a virus called avian pox. And we don't know exactly why these birds get this on Midway. And of course, that bird is doomed. That isn't going to shrink, it's just going to get bigger. That's going to interfere with the bird's ability to feed, and so that's a death sentence. These are black-footed albatross, one of the other species besides the Laysan albatross that is there. Here we have a black-footed walking past Laysan albatross. And some of you may recognize this low creeping vegetation as beach morning glory. It's just like the beach morning glory on the Texas coast. This is a picture of a Laysan albatross I took from the deck of the Cromwell. I don't know why, just thought it was cool. I like this picture, rather nice profile, don't you think? Handsome bird. This is the way they got their nickname, which is Goonie birds. This is the mating dance you've probably all seen on TV, where they stamp their feet, they clack their bills, clack, 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 and they give out these hollers. It's quite a show, and hence the name Goonie bird. This is a mating ritual. That's a nestling Laysan albatross. You can see they have no concern for the people that are there whatsoever. Okay, and now another environmental problem raises its head. This is a Laysan albatross feeding its chick. They eat largely squid. They'll also eat certain species of fish. And unfortunately, the adults are attracted to colorful plastic that is floating out there in the Pacific Ocean, of which there is no shortage. You know, the Great Pacific Gyre has got unbelievable amounts of plastic going around and around in the gyre. So they actively bring this colorful plastic back and feed it to their young, and the result for this bird was death. This is a really common problem. And we saw this on Laysan. It happens on all the other islands. This is a natural problem for Laysan albatross. That is a really, really big tiger shark, about 15 feet. And these sharks, this is an amazing thing. Each one of the islands, this picture happened to be taken at East Island, which is the one that got blown away in the storm. Each one of these islands has a big tiger shark, and it's the same shark year after year that comes back to the island in order to take advantage of these nestling albatrosses, which have to learn how to take off from the water. That's the only way they can actually fly. So, to me, that's interesting, and their timing is perfect. They know these sharks are traveling the ocean, the Pacific. God knows what areas they cover. But at the right time of year, they show back up at these islands. One tiger per island. And I saw many birds taken this way. So when at this time of year, we have to be careful about going in the water, because the tiger is a known man-eater, and these are big tiger sharks. This is the other shark we had that lived around the reef all the time. It's called a gray reef shark. And we discovered that the fisheries guys didn't know where these sharks breed in the Hawaiian Islands. And they wondered where that was. And we happened to see this going on Laysan, a big bunch of gray reefs going around and around and around in a circle. And it turns out Laysan is a breeding island for gray reef sharks. So then the divers would come out and study the fish once in a while. This isn't a shark you worry too much about in terms of swimming. Now I have to try to remember these burrowing birds. It wouldn't matter what I say. Probably none of you would know if I've getting it right or not. That's a wedge-tailed shearwater. That's a burrowing bird. they actually dig a burrow in the sand, and that's where they nest and have their young. This creates a problem for the wildlife biologists because we have to, obviously you don't want to step on these burrows and kill the bird and kill the young, but you do it until you've got a trail marked and got it cleared. So then we have to stick to those trails because we've already crushed some of the burrows on the trail. If you just wander around aimlessly, you're going to be going down in these burrows all the time, killing birds. This picture was taken at night with a flash, which is really the only time you see these birds out. All night long they wail and holler, and it's just a creepy sound, and there's so many of them that it keeps you up until you get used to it. This is a Christmas shearwater named after Christmas Island, and they're also a burrowing bird. They're very black. This was taken at night with a flash. Also, you only see these birds really at night. And I think this is one we stepped on the burrow, to be honest. I think it's it may be a Christmas shearwater nestling. This is a Bulwer's petrel. I think it digs a shallow, it doesn't actually dig a burrow, but it goes under vegetation and rocks and digs a trench in the sand. All of these birds, of course, eat fish. That's all they eat. And that's why the concern about fishing. This is a Bonin petrel. Bonin is an island, so it's named after Bonin Island. Also a burrowing bird. And all of these burrowing birds make these weird, ghostly sounds all night long. I wish I had recorded that, but I couldn't play it, then you wouldn't be able to hear me. Now here's why I was there. This is a pair of Laysan ducks. And if any of you know waterfowl, you see those two upturned tail feathers? My battery is about dead. That's a pretty good sign that there's some mallard genes in these ducks, but they're not pure mallards. So what happened was mallards occasionally, wind up on the island. They're lost or they get blown there in a storm. And the original parent duck, we're not really too sure. The genetic work I had done was done in the mid-90s, and that was the dawn of DNA typing, and I don't think the person that did the work for me really knew what was going on there. In the back, you see some ruddy turnstones. They are seen off and on all these islands. They're just passing through on migration. Now this is a sad case right here. This duck is a European widgeon drake, and got blown there in a storm, I suppose, from Asia probably. And he was there. You can see each one of these Laysan ducks is a male, and they're pretty curious about this bird. This one here is really, really steaming toward that duck. What's sad about this is he tried to mate, giving his mating call throughout the mating season with no success. Of course, because he's the wrong species, and the female Laysan ducks would not respond. But it just went on, and if I had had a shotgun, I would have put him out of his misery. On and on and on, day and night. This is part of the hypersaline lagoon. Okay, that's a fairy tern or white tern, just hovering in front of me. I could have tried to grab it. That's how unafraid they are. Just a normal lens. Here's one in front of the only other tree on the island beside the cocoa palms. This is a Australian pine or casuarina tree that was planted there long ago, also called an ironwood tree, and believe me, it's tough. And that's another fairy tern that just hovered in front of me, so I took its picture. This is where they'll nest. They don't build any nest whatsoever. That bird, there may be an egg under that bird right there, just sitting on the branch. And at East Island, one had laid an egg. There was a spigot, you know, with a handle to turn the faucet round. He laid an egg right in the middle of that. She laid an egg right in the middle of that, that faucet handle. This is a gray-backed tern. Didn't see a whole lot of them, so I got this picture of this one. These are the famous sooty terns, and that's with a young. This is a larger young, and this is what happens when you get too close to the sooty tern colony. And these birds are raucous beyond belief. They all get up, and they'll come and they'll look at you, they'll warn you, they dive bomb you, and they let you know what the bombs are, right? And you get out of there as fast as you can. They're a very aggressive little bird. This is a brown knotty tern. That's all I have to say about that. This is a black knotty tern. More black knotties sitting in the ironwood tree, which, by the way, is near the camp. Okay, and you all know what this is, right? Magnificent frigate bird. And you all know about how they steal fish from other birds, right?
Do everything.
So why are they called frigate birds?
They're like a line of frigate ships. They sit out along the shoreline and rob birds.
And more importantly, they are named after the frigate ship because that was the chosen vessel of pirates, because they're fast and maneuverable. And if there ever was a bird that could fly circles around other birds, it's this bird here. They've got huge wings for their weight, and a very long tail to help control their maneuvering. This thing is about dead. Okay, so now you've all seen these pictures of the male frigate with this gular pouch inflated like a giant red balloon. And this is mating. This is a mating ritual. The bird on the right is the female. She's drab. Why is that in a lot of birds the male is the colorful one and the female is the drab one, in ducks particularly? Because the female has to sit on the nest and hope that predators don't come along and see her. There are a few birds where those roles are reversed, and in those cases it's the male who incubates. Okay, more of the same. This one is looking at me, I believe, is why he's pointing in the wrong direction. This is a young frigate bird. You see a very simple stick nest just raised up on a shrub. And boy, they're nasty little birds. They're real pirates in the making. You approach one and they want to bite you, and they could really bite you too. The tip of that beak. That'll break your skin pretty easy. Okay, another endangered species in the Hawaiian Islands is the Hawaiian monk seal. And this is a big old bull. You can see the scars on his body. You can also see where the Johnsons have made 3 stripes with bleach on his fur as part of their study. I don't know exactly what they did. Supposedly they studied the behavior of the monk seals. He's pretty scarred up, and he's not at all afraid of me. Here's a couple of young. That's not a mother and a pup. I think it's just 2 young seals that are playing right there at the beach by the camp. This is one that went right past me in the water, say hi. This is a normal lens. He's just looking at me like you want to play or something like that. You see those wrinkles? The name monk seal comes from the fact that somebody thought, who named the seal, thought those wrinkles looked like the hood of a monk. So the name monk seal. Here we have a beach dispute in progress. That young seal seems pretty confounded why that albatross is giving him hell. I guess they resolved this okay eventually. Oh, wake up, Wendell.
Okay. You didn't put me in charge of Vice for nothing. Being the vice chair.
He's the vice. This is Maura, one of the seabird biologists, doing what we did quite a bit, lay on the beach. Okay, I'm not just showing you, for nothing. Oh, here come two young buck monk seals, and they're very interested in Maura. At this point, Maura has made her choice, apparently. And the other one is gone, and this one is just going to cozy right up and nap. Now, this reminds me of the time I was laying on the beach on my back with my feet sticking up in the air, and a seal like that was right up alongside of me and slowly took my foot in his mouth. And I'm thinking, well, you don't want to move, of course. So I'm just thinking, well, this could be the end of my field season this year, but it was very gentle. There was no pressure. I don't know if he tasted my foot or just wanted to say hi. But anyway, I got out of that. The green sea turtle uses these beaches as haul-out places. They're not known to nest on Lausanne very often, for some reason. This is the other reptile that's present on the island. It's called a snake-eyed skink. It's not native. It's not endemic to Lausanne. It was brought there at some time in the past, and it has survived. I don't think anyone actually knows when this people brought it at some point in the past, probably accidentally. Now there's that camera I showed you, and down here is a battery that operates the movie camera, time lapse. And out here is a clock, a wind-up clock in a plastic bag, and some sticks. So we wanted to know what these birds do at night, how much they're using this particular area where there's freshwater seep. And we have reels and reels of time-lapse photography of ducks moving around out there. So this is right at the edge of the central lake. Now in the second year, 1980, I put radio transmitters on maybe a dozen hens because we didn't know where these birds nested. And this is the only way you can find out. You can track down right to an individual bush with your detection equipment. One loop goes over the neck and the other goes behind the hind legs. And as simple and primitive as it looks, it works pretty good. Here's a female that has a transmitter on. You see how she's tried to cover it up with feathers when she's not preening. When she's preening, she just tried to cover the transmitter up with feathers and show no sign that it really bothers them at all. Here's one I took it at night with a flash. So you would never find a bird like this out there at night in a million years. So this way we can see, like, okay, where is she nesting? Because we didn't really know. We did after this study. They nest in those big clumps of grass called Aragrostis. This is the lake, and I'm just showing you this because you know what this, now I have 0 pointer. This pink stuff, you know what that is? Dead brine shrimp. There's only 2 things that can live in this nest. brine shrimp and brine fly larvae. And it's too salty for anything else. That tide gauge was installed many years ago. It hasn't worked for years. They wanted to see if they could, track the level of the lake. Off to the left of the pink, you can see there are some algae and bacteria that grow at the shore. Here's a pair of Laysan ducks that is utilizing one of their major food sources. If you can just kind of make out, there's a black stippling on the ground there. Those are brine flies. These birds are running at full speed with their head down, going from side to side, snapping up brine flies like this, kind of like they were dabbling in the water. And this is one of their major food items. So I followed the brine flies in the 2 years I was there to see what was happening with them. Not much happened. If they were to go away for some reason, this duck would be in serious trouble. This is a young duckling eating a larvae of a moth called Agrotis. They dabble in the sand under low vegetation to find these things, and they eat them. Time. Laysan finch beak, handsome wildlife biologist with Laysan finches. One of them come over and pick food out of your teeth, hang onto your beard and pick food out of your teeth.
Is that you, Dan?
Yeah, that's me.
Oh, my.
Okay, here we're going back to Honolulu, frigate birds, escorted by some bottlenose dolphins. There's Honolulian diamond head on the right. This second year I flew out of Midway. Here I am with a can of Primo beer, standing at Waimea Canyon. A bunch load of Japanese tourists gets off a bus. First thing they do is come out and start picking the flowers and the manicured beds. Then they start coming over to me to get their picture taken because they thought I was a native Hawaiian. Which I thought was funny, so I let them take pictures. This is a nene, the Hawaiian goose on the Big Island, state bird of Hawaii. So the nene and I say aloha to you. Time for any questions at all? You got a question, Kirk?
Have you been back since 1980?
No. And I'm not going back. Karen?
Did you do a book or publish a piece?
Oh, sure.
Can you repeat the question?
She said, did I do a book or publish a piece? I've written a couple of papers. You realize I was the world's leading authority on the Laysan duck after this work. So, of course, we published a paper, and then when they did Birds of North America, they wanted to include Hawaii. I was asked to do the species account for the Laysan duck. So, yes. Okay, anything else?
What did you learn about the fish? I mean, what was the conclusion about the birds and the fish?
Well, we learned that birds eat fish, and that the fishermen want the fish too. I don't know what they learned, but from the very first map, you see that the marine sanctuary has been expanded. That means no fishing within those boundaries, which means that problem no longer exists, we think. Now, there's always illegal fishing as a possibility. Those guys that wrecked, they probably were fishing illegally right close to the island. Okay, is there more questions? Yes?
I was just wondering if you knew what percentage of birds died of the plastic ingestion?
No, have no idea.
Too much, too many, whatever it is.
Well, they're not the only ones ingesting plastic from the ocean. You are too. But we don't have time to go into that, do we? Okay, so that's the end. So now a couple of final things. After this meeting, there's only one blue recycling bin in the room. It's back in that far corner. We used to have a couple more and they're not there. So you'll have to use that one. We're going to adjourn, and we're going to go to the Blue Goose, right? And that's up on Midway, just south of Beltline, on the east side of the road. Okay, so I think that's it. Is there anything else that needs to be said tonight? Ginger?
These T-shirts from the city of Dallas are for the taking, I believe, right? Murray? Where?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, so, and these bags, there's free stuff up at the front table, so have, whatever you like.
I'll just get one of those myself. Thank you.